2 for 3.
I know, right? I think we're live right now for another episode of Dude, What's the Bid? Talking about freight with my buddy Casey here. My name's Kevin. Here with Brush Pass Research and Casey over at Farelanes. How are you doing today, Casey?
Doing well, Kev. Thanks for asking. It's another rainy day here in Florida. It's unbelievable. I don't know if it's going to stop ever, but no, happy Thursday nonetheless.
Well, it's kind of cloudy, maybe a rainy day here in Dallas, which is good. It's been good weather lately, which is always a plus here. So, but yeah, how's your week been?
It's been good.
It's
it's been productive, been interesting. Starting to see. It's interesting talking to Henry Byers last week. We didn't really have any bullish sentiment, but I don't know. It seems like there's some metrics coming out of Henry and a couple other guys that are leveraging sonar, indicative of maybe things heating up. So
yeah, certainly more container traffic coming in. A lot of that, as Henry was explaining last week, is being routed to trucks instead of the rail for expedited delivery. Coming up on Q4 and the busy season, especially when it comes to dry van freight. So maybe there's something there. Hopefully there is. Hopefully there's at least a little bit of seasonal pop, and that's about all we can ask for these days sometimes. So
right, yeah, hurricanes, a little bit of weather maybe.
Hey,
I was doing some shopping on Labor Day weekend.
Look here, the man Steve Ferrara is out there listening. So Steve, miss you. We worked together. He had a great Freight Rave show for a long time. Now he has his own media empire, his own studio and truck, and he's just having a blast. I talked to Steve a couple weeks ago.
Glad to hear it. I haven't caught up with him in years. He's the man. Might be the most dapper man in all of supply chain, and
definitely the most dapper.
Certainly somebody who's at the top of his game as well.
Definitely is. Good to see Steve. So yeah, a little bit of, he's an ocean expert too. So Steve, and so got containers coming in. We got empties going out. Do we have any price action? A little bit maybe coming in, but hopefully things will turn around very soon, and we can get to a more normalized market. I've been talking to a lot of people about, what kind of bounce or turnaround we may see. And, I saw Arrive Logistics published their monthly guide out this week, or maybe it was last week, but I was reading up, and they're saying 2025 might be much like 2024. So, and it's hard to come up with a scenario of a bounce. There's a buddy, Adam Robinson, right there. Good to see Steve and Adam out there. They're listening. So yeah, it's good. It's good. So, what do you think, Casey?
Yeah, it's lost my train of thought there, to be completely honest with you, Kev.
That's okay. Do that all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. Good to see that there's some signs of life in the market, and yeah, that's all I got. We've totally lost that train of thought. But
that's okay. Hey, we have two great guests coming on in just a second, and I am going to let you introduce them. You're more familiar with what they're doing, and let's just introduce them, get on the show. I'm interested to learn more about it.
Yeah, likewise. I may know a little bit more than you do, but certainly not as much as Dan or Sean. And I don't know. I'm certainly somebody who prefer to get it straight from the horse's mouth. So I figure we'll just welcome these guys up and let them introduce themselves. John, connected with you a couple times over LinkedIn. It's a pleasure to finally put a face to the name. It's pretty awesome beard shoe that you got going there. I love that. But yeah, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys are doing over at Carrier Defender?
Yeah, I get feedback. I got to get my profile picture updated. I just got to get the camera folks together because you want to get a good headshot to replace what you had 2 years ago. But thank you for the compliment, Casey. But yeah, we're just trying to put something together and build noise to discourage some of the unethical folks out there, or some of the new people out there who don't realize how much damage can be done by putting an exaggerated or a false review on a trucking company's MC number, right? And from what we've seen, this what's going out there can put a lot of people out of business, and we've even heard about some blackmail going on where someone's putting a fake review, demanding some money in return, or they're going to put that trucker out of business. So that's what we're about. I do want to give Dan a chance to talk about his, because he's quite the brains behind what we got. He does add the credibility that we need to do what we need, as he's practiced law in this area a little bit.
Thanks, Sean. Casey, Kevin, thanks so much for having us on today. I really appreciate it. I'm Dan Artave. I'm the founder and managing partner of Artave at Law. We are based out of Metro Detroit, the Motor City. So right along that I-94 corridor, huge for trucking. So I actually got into solving the freight guard issue sort of by accident. I wrote an article about it back in 2020, where there was this huge case where a trucker was suing a broker for a false freight guard review that cost a bunch of money, and there ended up being the verdict of something like $650,000 in favor of the carrier for this false freight guard. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting that people post stuff on the internet all the time and don't realize that it can be a serious consequence, not only to the people who are being targeted by this, but also to themselves in terms of potential liability for defamation or libel or slander, many different terms for kind of the same concept. So I thought that was interesting. And then somehow, after I wrote that article, I got to the top 5 of Google searches when somebody was searching for Carrier 411 lawsuit. And I started getting truckers calling me, asking for help with this issue, and it sort of developed into a niche area for my law firm to do. And then not too long ago, I got together with Sean, and we started brainstorming solutions to this freight guard problem, to this defamatory review problem, and trying to create a product through Carrier Defender that was kind of a more expedited and cheaper and more accessible product for trucking companies to take advantage of when they're facing a false review. Because let me tell you, the judicial process is long, it's expensive, and it's also very difficult to find an attorney out there who knows what you're talking about when you say, hey, I got freight guarded. So that's what we're all about. I'm really happy to be a part of this transportation community, working with a lot of carriers and Sean and everybody. So, and I get to meet cool people like Casey and Kevin as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
Literally couldn't say it better than myself. I didn't do the 4 years in law school, so he's been a powerful force behind what we're trying to do.
It only took me 3 years.
Oh man, well, overachiever, Dan. Come on.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm reading it right now. So what was the story there? They got accused of holding a load hostage?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it was, a bunch of back and forth. But at the end of the day, the point was, hey, they posted a false review, cost the carrier a bunch of money. The carrier took them to court, got a huge verdict, like 6 figures. That's
nice.
Significant. And
it is significant.
Yeah, and I just think that a lot of the time from the broker side, I don't know how many brokers realize the impact that a freight guard can have on a carrier, especially the smaller mom and pop operations with 2-3 trucks. And carriers are frustrated because they get hit with this, their trucks stop, and they don't know where to turn.
Yeah, I remember. So I haven't brokered any freight since like December of 2016. So it's been a while, but we relied on reports, right? Freight guard reports and things like that. I think the importance of that since then as well is kind of intensified, right? It's intensified. So it's something that if you have freight guard report, just by your SOPs at a brokerage, you're not going to work with that carrier. Depending on what that freight guard report is. And we used to spend Friday afternoons reading through the freight guard reports, and they went from the minuscule to why is this broker wasting their time writing this report, because they booked them off a load board and they decline. They initially accepted the load, then they declined the load, and happens every day. No big deal. To what you're saying, the hostage situations, and certainly anything negative like a hostage load or things of that nature, you're kind of do not load, DNL, and it's pretty standard across a lot of brokerages. So when we talk about defamation, what exactly is defamation? We have that one example. What are some other examples of defamation on
defamation
reviews?
Yeah, it's simply a false statement of fact about somebody or somebody's business that has a damaging impact on their business, and it's done intentionally, and it's also something that's published to the third parties out there, which is a given in an online setting. So that's what defamation is. There's a difference between statements of fact, which are subject to liability, and statements of opinion. Like I can go out there and I guess I can post on Facebook or on Twitter or on LinkedIn that I think Sean's a bad truck driver, and I've never seen anybody drive worse than that.
Never drove a truck. He's not wrong.
Yeah, that's a statement of opinion. There's not much you can do about that. We have the First Amendment in the U.S. that protects statements of opinion in most situations. And again, I'm oversimplifying, but that's kind of the general gist. But when I go out there and I say, man, Sean stole this load from me and he's a double broker, and I'm just like, this guy is a thief.
Right. And he's like, until proven innocent, it seems like in the current way that things work, right? In that industry.
Yeah. And if you go out there and put yourself out there and you make a statement like that, for whatever reason, maybe you're just having a bad day and Sean pissed you off that day, or maybe you're trying to get something from Sean in exchange for, not leaving a bad review, which is a whole another issue. But whatever your motivation is, if you intentionally make a false statement that hurts somebody's business like that, you're going to be liable.
And I can see that happening in a lot of cases where there is a conflict, right? There's a conflict, and it's a true conflict, and someone comes on to a review site and exaggerates the facts in the case, right? Or they throw in some things that didn't really happen. To really, prove their point. And I guess what you're saying is that brokerages should be very, very careful about what they post.
Yeah, and I want to be. We do think about that what you just said, Kevin. I mean, brokerages. There should be some procedures, and honestly, the biggest brokerages do have procedures to keep them safe from problems like this. If you exaggerate, if you make a slightly false statement that damages a trucking company, you can get dragged into court.
Yeah.
So when I have conversation with Dan, it's how do we push the needle on this problem, right? I mean, we're not a company that's just here to profit. I mean, we want to make a difference, and one way is telling brokers like, hey, if you're going to write a freight guard, some trucking companies deserve it. They're very unprofessional, or they back solicited your client. There's a lot of reasons why you deserve to be reviewed, and people deserve to know what you did. But when you write those reviews, you need to be very professional and factual with your information. And if you do that, you really don't have too much to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, what I've noticed is there's a lot of new brokers coming out of college, coming into their first sales job. They're 30 days into their job, and they're cold calling shipping companies, and they're slinging freight across the country. And they're 30 days in, and they have a login to carrier411.com. And, if they get upset, or if they get salty, if they get emotional, and they're still brand new, that truck driver is walking into a big problem, right? And right now, that truck driver has nothing to fight back with, nothing to defend themselves, nothing to protect their company. If they have 5 drivers, if they have 10 drivers, and they had ran into one unlucky situation, they're risking going out of business. And, people say, Carrier 411 is not going to put you out of business. And, they do have a point. I would personally say, if you have a really bad freight guard on carrier411.com, you're probably going to lose 20 to 30% of the spot market. And, that's not going to destroy you, but it's going to hurt. You're going to spend more time trying to find a backhaul that day. You're not going to qualify for certain backhauls that day. That's going to lead to more deadhead. That's going to lead to more hours trying to buckle load. There's damage associated with losing that much of the market. And now, woe is you if you get hit on highway, carrier okay, freight validate, carrier sure. If you get hit on all of them, you're going to shut down guaranteed. There's just no way to operate. But when I knew about this problem for about 2 years until I ran into Dan Ortave, and we had one more partner, Alex Bates. And I couldn't do anything by myself until we found the crew that cared enough to put something together. And our goal really is to, when somebody goes on Facebook or Reddit and they ask, hey man, I got hit with a freight guard, it's not fair, what am I supposed to do? Instead of the comment saying, I don't know, hey, find a lawyer, hey, good luck, nobody knows. Because that's literally what the comments say right now, today.
Yeah.
We want someone to say, hey, there's these cool guys, Carrier Defender, reach out to them, they will help you. And that's what our goal is here, Kevin and Casey. That's what we want to do. And honestly, if we do it right and people start doing their jobs right and being professional, I think the rates on the market will improve a little bit with random trucking companies not going out of business when they do good. And I think it helps everybody. We'd like to be a net positive. And that's our mission, guys.
Cool. So how do you guys go about doing that? The product or service. So let's delve into that a little bit.
Do you want me to answer that, Dan? Or?
Yeah, go for it, Sean.
Sure. So when we thought about it, we've done some homework on what's currently being done right now. The first thing people should do is try to get it done yourself, right? If you're a trucking company, go call that broker and be professional, unemotional, factual, and reach out to their sense of humanity and logic. Like, hey, this is not a fair freight guard. Let's try to figure this out. It's destroying my company. I may have made a mistake, but this is overkill. Like, can we talk? And a lot of the times, you can get that broker to listen to reason, and they'll say, okay, you know what, you're right. I will remove it, and you're done. And that's free. It costs you some time, maybe some pride, but you're going to save a lot of money with the damage you're going to see for the rest of your trucking company's life, right? That's what we recommend. We collaborated with one of the big YouTube channels to write out a self-serve guide. We actually wrote that guide so that folks can have a direction to do it themselves. And we always encourage people, do self-serve first, because, we have a lawyer in-house. Lawyers, we're thankful to have Dan, but Dan is cannibalizing some of his time to spend time on this. So we cannot be the cheapest solution here, right? But we would like to be step 2. And we'd like to be step 2 through all the way to the end, because we can guide them in how to pursue a lawsuit if it is deserved. But that's all we want to be, step 2 through the end. But yeah, step 2 is we usually go through informal means. It kind of depends on the situation. We'll call the broker on the carrier's behalf I'm formerly a freight broker. I have experience and I know what it's like to be a broker. So I do relate to them, and I'm able to use the same language, communicate. And we do intend to leverage that. Our other partner is a former dispatcher, so he has that perspective from the carrier side as well. So we put our heads together to see, like, okay, what really happened, who's in the wrong, who's in the right, and we'll try to handle it informally. I'm going to be frank. I mean, there's some really, really messed up, unethical people out there, and we will consider being a little bit louder because we do have some social media reach. If a broker has been incredibly unethical about it, I mean, where it's just straight back blackmail, we will be much louder about them on social media, like LinkedIn. But that's kind of the angles we go through. Again, I'm frank, I'm fair. I think Carrier 411 is one of the best products in the market. I personally do not have any problems with them. I think the problem is with the freight brokers who are not doing their due diligence when they write these reviews. And we just want to help the people not fall through the cracks if they don't deserve it. So, but yeah, informal means.
It's kind of a mediation advocacy solution. We just go to bat on their behalf.
Yeah. But yeah, informal means first. If that doesn't work, we'll escalate to a cease and desist letter. And if that doesn't work, we can take this to court through the network that we have. So we did want to be very careful. We had a step 2 through finish solution before we launched this product. And we just spent a lot of time. Dan and I spent a lot of time putting this together before we came out of stealth mode, guys.
Right. Is there, the legal piece is certainly a big part of it, I think, in being able to fight, libel statements or whatever it may be, defamatory stuff that's being said about you. Have you guys thought about, or is there an angle with tech to start doing some reputation management for these trucking companies, right? In the case that there's the 10 or the 15 truck carrier that, has delivered 1,000 loads perfectly consecutively, they, have an issue with the 1,001st load. It's with a new broker, and they get a freight guard written about them. Is there a world where it seems like the broker has so much control in that scenario to, define what a company is? Is there a way for carriers that are, acting well to work with somebody like a carrier defender to start building that, historical record of their service so that somebody can't defame them as easily?
You're talking about kind of like a counterweight to the freight guard, because one example that was just given to me is if you go on Google reviews and somebody has 300 5-star reviews and one negative review, their overall rating is going to be a 4.9, and nobody's going to even look twice. But with freight guards, there is no counterweight. You got freight guarded, you're going to show up red on Carrier 411. So
it's all red, right? There's no green reviews on.
It's just mad people. Salty people only. No positivity.
Nope.
No positive. And that's the reason why we used to, on a Friday afternoon, just go in and read freight guard reports, because they're entertaining, right?
I've been guilty.
I mean, it goes from the mundane, like, why did anyone waste their time writing this? It doesn't even make sense why there's a freight guard report for this, to really serious issues, right? But yeah, you're right about that. It's all doom and gloom.
I've seen my fair number front page of Reddit freight guard reports, and those are really worth reading. It's better than Netflix, is what I'd say. But yeah, be clear. We're not trying to, just go after the brokers. Like, we want to be even-handed about it. Like, brokers, write a fair review so you don't get in trouble, please. And then carriers, have a way to fight for yourself. So I do want to be clear about that. Some people have contacted us a little bit worried that, this is a product that's going to be an allergic reaction to everybody. And that's not what we're trying to do. We just want to educate both sides. We are going to be speaking at the Broker Carrier Summit on the subject. Perfect. And we're just building noise so that people people start moving a little bit and improve everybody's life a little bit better. So that's what we're doing.
Right. That's really cool to hear. Kevin's involved with the Broker Carrier Summit.
Oh, cool. Didn't know that, Kevin. I'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely see you there. They're having a board meeting right now, but I'm talking to you guys because it's so important.
That's funny.
That's an excuse.
And it is important. It is important. I have a question. And it's kind of it's on subject, right? A little bit. What about the third party? The platforms that people use. FreightGuard being one. Carrier Source is another one. Highway, right? TIO Watchdog. Or is there any liability or any responsibility to vet those reports, or is it up to the private parties?
This is definitely Dan's question to answer.
I'll be happy to answer that question.
Yeah.
It's actually a very interesting one because so in federal law, there's something called Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act that was passed in the late 90s to protect then startup platforms like YouTube and Google.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what the law says is that a platform that acts as a forum for people to post content is not going to be considered the speaker for the purposes of defamation law. It's just, it would have killed Google, it would have killed YouTube, it would have killed Facebook to have to be responsible for every single post that somebody makes. Rather, the liability is with the person making the statement, not the host platform. So Carrier 411 has been big on hiding behind Section 230 and saying that we are not liable. People need to do their own due diligence. And if you've noticed, I don't know if you ever kind of look back at what FreightGuard's looked at in the past. FreightGuards look a little bit different right now in the sense that Carrier 411 and their lawyers are putting more and more disclaimers. Do your own due diligence. We're not saying that anybody should be used. I think it's at the top of the FreightGuards now if anybody bothers to read the fine print, but it's there. And the reason for that is at the end of the day, whether or not they're shielded from liability under Section 230, they have a separate liability not to be negligent and to use due care and have some responsibility for what their platform is being used for. So, for example, if they don't do any sort of safeguards at all, and they're just like a free-for-all, and there's, causation, and somebody proves that people are just misusing this, you're going to have a negligence liability that's completely separate from defamation shield. That's Section 230, if that makes sense, because negligence is kind of one of those common law theories that exists no matter what, and you still have to be responsible despite the fact that federal law protects you from defamation liability.
And that's the same type of that's what we've heard from Twitter and Facebook, certainly during the elections and the spreading of.
Yes, we're not responsible. It's the poster. But at the same time, do you have some responsibility as the mechanism? And that's kind of still up in the air. There was a Supreme Court case actually about Section 230 this past term, but nothing changed. And it continues to be a pretty powerful shield. But again, at the same time, there is a responsibility. And I think companies like Carrier 411 know this, and the evolution of their disclaimer is just a really good example of how they're trying to maybe dampen that potential liability for themselves.
Yeah, exactly right about that. Kind of goes into the news sites where you take the New York Times, right? What's written in an article in the New York Times, they're responsible for it. Their comments, it becomes a gray area, right? So, and that's where companies like Carrier Defender comes in, because
Yeah, yeah. And there was a really good example of this. Actually, I do some gaming law, and there was a lawsuit against Apple and the App Store for hosting certain apps that were very, very close to illegal gambling. And Apple filed a motion to dismiss, saying, "Hey, we're not liable for this for what people post on the platform under Section 230." And the court didn't agree with Apple and said, Apple, you're directly making money off of what is possibly illegal gambling in this game because there's in-app purchases. So, Apple, your conduct is negligent here, and we're not dismissing the case against you. So again, oversimplification, but it's kind of an interesting example that shows that there is some responsibility on behalf of the platforms, despite the fact that there is a federal law protecting them as the speaker from being the speaker of defamatory statements.
Mm-hmm. And if we go over like best practices for both brokerages and carriers once they're reviewing each other, what are some of the best practices for
Let me tee this one up.
Yeah.
Go for it, Sean.
I've had a few conversations, right? And from what I've gathered, you really want to have one individual write these reviews, right? I mean, if you have 16 people with access to the login, they're going to write whatever they want, and it's going to be very hard to standardize a professional response. And we've seen a lot of emotional reviews written. Someone said a carrier did something like magic. Well, magic's not real. Bingo, you're opening yourself up to something. You don't say anything emotional like that. Carrier doesn't fall off like magic and reappear like magic. That doesn't happen. Don't put that in a review. Never. But yeah, so have one person. It doesn't have to be the executive. You can have a compliance person, but someone who knows, hey, I don't need to drag my brokerage into a lawsuit. I do not need to expose us to liability. We don't want to be reached out to by a lawyer. Let's only put information in this review that can be documented. Either maybe some brokers record phone calls, that's fine. Some brokers have email chains, but document it, and you'll be fine. As long as you're very, very black and white about it. And I'm sure if you've dealt with any broker in the audience who's dealt with Carrier 411 is going to see, yeah, there's some pretty fair reviews, and then there's some really wild ones.
Yeah.
And then on the same note, on that specific platform, for the review platform, the trucking company can always write a response. And the mistake I always see is the trucking company is usually emotional about it. And we know why. A trucking company is usually not as, they're not as educated as the average broker. And that's just a fact. The average driver didn't go to college. The average broker usually is a fresh graduate. So they usually have a disadvantage with writing a professional response to something that they received. And they usually get 72 hours, which is also a limited time frame to write something professional. If you're underwater dispatching your trucks, you got 10 trucks, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe you didn't have time to write a professional response. But it really hurts. It really hurts their brand if they do not have a very measured response to what happened on that review, and it just hurts everybody. So
Right.
I think it's not an even playing field. It's disadvantage towards the carrier. And but I do want to let Dan add on to that as well.
No, I think that's great in terms of in terms of what brokers should be doing. As one person to responsible for freight guard reviews. I would also, of course, because I'm a lawyer, I would urge them to bring in their either in-house counsel or a transportation attorney such as myself for some consulting about standards, and maybe put some rules into place about how these freight guards go up, in what situation, and who has to okay it. I think that's definitely best practices from the brokerage side. From the carrier side, I agree with Sean that the deck is definitely stacked towards the broker, especially when the only way you would know that you even got a freight guard is if you happen to see the email that sometimes goes to spam or just gets lost. And then you have 72 hours to respond. And then even if you do respond in the most factual and professional way, a lot of the times that doesn't mean much because, again, a broker sees a red flag, freight guard, doesn't bother to read what the carrier's response is. And so I really think that's problematic. And just it's just inherent to the industry. And especially with the way the market is right now. I was just having this conversation. It's really, really devastating to have a freight guard in this market. Maybe in 2020 it didn't matter.
Right.
Everybody had freight guards, but there was so much stuff being shipped that it's like whatever. Right now, brokers are a lot more choosy and it's a lot more impactful.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, a broker, at the end of the day, I love the idea of having, one person own the reputation management for your capacity, but at the end of the day, right? Like that's your supply, that's your capacity. You want that to be as efficient as possible. So every time you write off a carrier, I know there's hundreds of thousands and a million other options, but that's one side of the equation that is certainly a huge part of the efficiency of the good
Yeah.
broker, right?
And I mean, the real reason a broker needs Carrier 411 is they need some leverage, right? I mean, I've slung freight across the country myself, and I've been in a situation where I have a trucking company who's not communicating, not doing their due diligence. I'm like, hey, man, if you keep going down this route and you don't do your check calls and something goes wrong, you're going to get a freight guard. I mean, I've personally never written a freight guard, in my opinion. I got very, very close. But it's powerful. And, the carrier usually fixes their attitude real quick. Like, business is business. Do your job. I gave you a rate con. I'm paying you fairly. Let's not have problems. And it's a powerful tool. I mean, you don't need to abuse it. You don't need to threaten people with it. But it's just a fact. Like, hey, if something goes wrong, this is what's going to happen. I'm just letting you know. And it's something that brokers need, I think. The thing is, with that, you can still have access to that capability, even if you're not the one logging in, right? I mean, you can pass that on to the compliance team. It's not something that needs to be done tomorrow or in 24 hours. That can be written once a week, and it can be factual. But I think brokers can hold on to that leverage that they do need to do their job, while also holding carriers accountable in a fair and balanced, even-handed manner. So that's my perspective. And then we do want to sit on the fence as a company on that, because we do need to have conversations with both sides to get something changed. This is not the beat on one side of the argument kind of thing.
So, Sean, Dan, you brought up some really good points. I wrote a few of these down in that exchange. And I'll start with the most recent here is a threshold of writing a negative review, right? What really qualifies for a freight guard report, I think, is in the eye of the beholder. Really,
Yes.
there's no rhyme or reason, and I think that should be defined by the industry. What really amounts that hurdle into actually writing a freight guard report? Because I've seen some that are, as I said, are just trivial.
I mean, not just freight guards, any kind of review.
Any kind of
platform.
review.
Yeah,
Yes.
we agree,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Honestly, right now, the threshold is I'm salty and I'm going to hit you.
And it brings me to another great point you made is having one person write the freight guard reports. Yeah. So if you have 300 carrier salespeople, all with logins to Carrier 411 or whatever else, you don't want open season on letting anyone write a review, because there's going to be at least one person salty every minute of the day in a brokerage, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me, Kevin, of a case I recently handled that went all the way to litigation. Mm-hmm. Long story short, the person that made the freight guard was an off-site contractor, but because they were employed by the brokerage, like the guy that made the review was in Ohio, the brokerage was in Virginia, the carrier was in California, and this basically ended up in litigation with a significant award against this brokerage due to the fact that they didn't have the appropriate controls on their contractors, essentially, because they are responsible for this.
Well, it's probably written under that brokerage's account, right?
Absolutely. As a representative,
they are responsible then, right?
Yeah, and again, I mean, the brokerage was also not. They did a lot of things wrong to get all the way to litigation, but at the end of the day, I think this is just a very important example of a real world situation where, hey, the absence of any controls and the ability of some guy who doesn't even work on site to log into Carrier 411 and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's a problem, and that's the internal controls problem.
It definitely is.
So don't do that, brokers.
I'm thinking about that famous Cardell Jones tweet. I don't know if you guys remember it from back in the day when he was at Ohio State. I didn't come to college to play no school. But don't press send, buddy, right?
Sit on it for 24 hours. See if you're still mad, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nothing emotional. Emotional is usually not a good decision to make if it's an emotional one. So I agree with that.
Another really good point was responding. How important it is for carriers to respond to freight guard reports. And I guess they only have 72 hours. And the notification process is a mess, because if you don't know it's coming, then it's hard to look out through all your junk mail and everything to really realize it.
Everybody gets so many emails each day.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's honestly, I don't blame the platform, right? Because they did not agree to hire staff to police the reviews that are coming in. I mean, they're one of the most popular products on the market. They're a lean team. You know, when they started, I think 2 decades ago, they were just an allergic reaction to the fraud and double brokers out there. And the product works. You know, the product is overall a net positive on the industry. Yes, you got some innocent people getting hurt, but overall, pros and cons, I think it's a net positive, and it was a product that needed to be made. And now everyone else, you got a lot of other players looking to come into the market, take some market share. And then the website just evolved into something else over time, and now it's just leverage for the freight broker, and it's overpowered. It's almost like a nuke, right? I mean, we don't want to have a bad relationship with these platforms. Again, we want to have conversation, dialogue with everybody, the brokers, the carriers, and these platforms, because that's how you get things changed. So I don't want people to think that we are coming after Carrier 411. No, not at all. I'd love to have a conversation with Darren. We'd love to share ideas that might be equitable while also not bankrupting him, right? I mean, it's a business. He didn't agree to this.
I have to admit, at the end of the day, Sean, sorry to cut you off, but knowing who the good carriers are is got to be at least as valuable as identifying who the bad carriers are, right? So Carrier 411, I imagine it'd be a much more powerful tool if they not only provided a platform to write negative reviews about trucking companies, but provided an opportunity to highlight who the carriers are.
I'd love it.
In the market.
As long as you prevent fake reviews, great. But
Right.
what the last thing we need is somebody from Armenia, spinning up a brokerage and getting the positive review account and then just spamming 200 positive reviews for a bad carrier, and then now we have the same problem. So it's you have a good idea. It has to be carefully executed, because man, those fraudsters are smart, man. They are smarter than me. Probably not smarter than Dan, but they're smarter than me. I'm a smart guy too, man. But the things I've seen, I mean, they are social hackers. I don't know. I mean, they've got some serious strategies, guys.
In my conversations with Rob over at Carrier Source, I mean, about 86%, I think that's his number, about 86%, overwhelming of broker reviews of carriers are positive, right? Which is something that if you're only reading freight guard reports, you'd find outstanding. But most loads go off without a hitch. I think as you're saying, Sean, is that define for the notification process, defining what really meets the hurdle of actually sitting down and writing a freight guard report, and that's something that that the industry needs to solve. There, right? Freight brokers and carriers need to solve that in responding to all reports, or some of the things that we all need to concentrate on.
Yeah,
And you make a great point too, and I think a lot of businesses, you would think, with social media being everywhere, a lot of businesses, the vast majority of them have something called social media policies that have very strict guidelines about what employees are allowed and not allowed to post. So, for example, I run a law firm. I have standards for my employees that they're not allowed to post something that implicates my law firm as a speaker. I mean, they can go on social media and they can post their opinions, but they can't be seen as speaking on behalf of my firm, because that just exposes me to liability. I don't have time to police that. And I'm not even in the industry which deals in stuff like reviews, where reviews are as important as they are in the carrier industry.
Yeah.
I just think that's good business practice, no matter what industry you're in.
It's the right way to do it.
It is. Yeah. It is. So, what's on the roadmap for a carrier defender?
So we're just currently making noise. I did want to mention a few things we're trying to do. But yeah, we came out of stealth mode, I think 3 weeks to a month ago. We were just making sure we had a minimum viable product, a good strategy that we can start scaling with. And again, we're just trying to do reputation management for small trucking companies. That's really what our goal is to do that very, very well. Help the small guys who need help with legalese, who need help with a little bit of education and need some guidance on, hey, just prevention is much better than reacting to these freight guards. Just sometimes when those brokers are using their leverage too hard, you'll have to just take it and blacklist them and never work with them again. So, but that's kind of what we do. We don't want anyone to call us twice. Like, you call us once, we're going to give you some tough love about what you got into, but don't call us again. Don't run into this problem again. Don't work with brokers who are a little bit yellow flaggy, and just try to avoid this situation in the first place. Because honestly, if you've got to work with us, you're going to be spending money that you could have kept in your pocket, that if you just avoided the situation in the first place. So that's really our goal. We don't want to hear people calling us twice. Really, tell your friends about us, but you don't need to be calling us twice. One thing we're trying to do, and Dan, I know you had limited time. I don't know if you need to step out, but I'll keep going.
I do need to step out in a little bit because I have a couple pressing engagements I already committed to.
Yeah, I don't know if people know me around LinkedIn. I'm a bit of a noisy guy. I make a lot of noise. People call me a hype guy, whatever they want to call me. I'm a sales guy. But I do make a lot of interesting connections and a lot of friends. And one of the friends I've made is a gentleman named Ian Chi, and he's a bit of a film guy. He's a documentary expert. And after about a month of back and forth with him, throwing ideas, because he's very, very good at what he does. He's the former creative director at Jubilee, which is an 8 million subscriber YouTube channel. But he did incredible things, and he told incredible stories over there. And I told him, there's a freight fraud story if you'd ever be interested. And he thought about it, and he says he would like to put his brain behind producing a documentary on freight fraud. Obviously, we would like Carrier Defender to have some voice in that documentary about what's going on with these reviews, but we would like to make most of that will be for everybody else, because stolen cargo, fighting cargo claims, double brokerage, all those things need more volume than what we're doing. We need some volume. We'll have a small piece of that, but we would like to partner up with everybody else who feels strongly about what this industry is going through. And I think most people agree trucking gets deprioritized up there in DC. So maybe making a little bit more noise for all the lobbying efforts you got out there. I think if you can send someone a polished documentary that just packages everything into 16 minutes is going to be powerful. It'll be a multiplier on those lobbying efforts. And we had a meeting with Dale Prax. Everybody loves Dale. That guy is a real cool guy. And he said he thinks this is a decent idea. So I'm going to be putting my weight behind it. I'm all in. But if anybody wants to talk to me and ask me about us, we are very legitimate. We have the professional talent to get it done. We just need the support. So we're just trying to make volume on that. And I think that's going to also push the needle in our industry. But yeah, when I do go to the Broker Carrier Summit, I will be two birds, one stoning that. Hey, stop care blackmail. But hey, if you want to do a movie or a documentary, this crazy son of a bitch Sean is crazy enough to actually try and do that. But I'm not kidding. Look, if you look up Ian, he's very, very, very good at what he does. And then last thing I wanted to say, guys, we're not going to support double brokers. Like, we've had double brokers reach out to us. Hey, can you help us remove this freight guard? We got a pretty good nose. We will never not work. We will not work with them. I'm not saying, someone might be extra sneaky and slip through us just like they slip by a broker, but we don't want to help double brokers at all. I want them all out of business. I want to shine a light on that stuff. That's just ruining the industry. They steal cargo. I mean, one of the carrier cases we're working on, they accidentally booked a load with some double broker who stole the cargo. Guess what? That angry brokerage, they hit everybody with a freight guard. And it's like, man, you gambled. It's almost like gambling when you start an MC number up. And you don't know who you're running into. And if the con artist is really good, you almost have no chance. So that's what we're trying to help with, guys.
Yeoman's work.
That is. We're just our audience. Reach out and find out more. Is it carrierdefender.com or?
Yeah, that's our website.
Carrierdefender.com. Yep.
I'm very active on LinkedIn. I will always respond to everybody who messages me. People think I'm a pretty straight up guy, but yeah, that's what we're doing. But if you can, let people know Sean's crazy and trying to shoot a movie.
Cool. Cool. Very good. Well, thanks guys for stopping by and talking with us today.
Hey, of course.
Appreciate your time. Kevin, I will be at the Broker Carrier Summit as well, and we'll all get together and
we will
meet each other in person.
We will. We'll get together. That's in 6 short weeks, October 23rd to the 25th.
Coming up.
I know it is coming up, and we're getting everything ready for it, and it's going to be exciting here in downtown Fort Worth. So, if you have any interest and want to learn more about that, you can go to brokercarriersummit.com. There's a new website up as of I think yesterday. So, and if you have any questions about it, you can contact me directly on LinkedIn. Happy to share the details and we're going to have a great crowd out there, and it's always just a fun conference.
Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thanks for telling our story, guys. We appreciate your platform, and hopefully, I'm more than happy to learn more about your guys' rate product. And again, we just appreciate you guys, and thank you for inviting us, Casey.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Been our pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Catch you guys on the flip side.
Great conversation as always.
Yes.
It really is. So any parting words?
What's up with you? I know you've been working on some new stats, things of that nature.
I have about ready to post it, and looking at gross revenue numbers. I got some great financial data a couple months ago, and been kind of putting that together and getting I'm going to come out with a whole new set of metrics on revenue numbers, especially over the last 12 months, and starting that up here in the next few minutes when I post it out on LinkedIn. But average gross revenue per employee at about 900, a collection of about 900 brokerages, the largest ones. So it's interesting,
Who's making the most per head?
Can't really say that. but I need to double check a few things. So there's a nice little race. But I will say the average across the entire industry is, I got it right here, $1.267 million.
Okay.
So each employee, whether that's back office or a broker or carrier salesperson, you attach a number to that head, and about 1.267 million. And if you look at the graph, it's clustered around there.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So
Makes it a lot easier to size up a brokerage.
it does. It does. So then I'll have some credit ratings versus gross revenue and average revenue, and some tie in some of these different data sets together, and be rolling that out over the next few weeks.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it for this episode of Dude, What's the Bid? What episode is this? 17?
19.
19. I can't count. I can do revenue numbers, but I can't count. But 19 will be coming to you next week with episode number 20.
That's right, baby. Let the truckers truck.
Yeah. Peace out. Have a great week.
All right, man. Catch you later.
Yeah.